Hey everyone, in this episode we're going to be installing our vapor barrier. So we're going to be explaining you why it's important and how we do it. So let's get into it. So you might be wondering what's this white stuff that I have behind me. But before I get onto that, let's talk a little bit about physics and condensation. So what's condensation? Basically, condensation occurs when you have a big temperature difference between two objects, let's say. So let's say you're chilling by the beach in Cancun or whatever, drinking a margarita, and you get your margarita or a glass of water from the waiter, and you will see all these droplets of water that basically are attached to the glass. That water did not come from the waiter, it actually comes from the environment. So there's a relative humidity in the air, and that air is what condensates onto the condensation surface when there's a big change in temperature. And so that's where that water is. And so now if we take that concept onto the house, basically what we're doing is here in the mountains, we live in zone 7, and we have huge changes or differences in temperature. So, for example, we might be outside like minus 40 degrees C and even Fahrenheit too, and inside we might be 20 degrees C. So that will cause the air here inside of the house to condensate on the inside of the walls of the structure. And that's really bad because you might know that water is really bad for any kind of structure. It can be either wooden, concrete, it doesn't really matter. It's really bad for any structure. So now this thing is our vapor barrier, and what this Siga product does for us is it prevents the vapor that's floating in the air from going into the cavity and forming condensation, at least from the air that's within the livable space. There can obviously be air and some kind of humidity inside of the walls, but it's very minimal because we have insulation and all this stuff. Another thing that makes this vapor very, very special is that it's kind of like a one-way pipe. It doesn't allow vapor to go in from the living space onto the cavities, but it allows vapor to come out from the cavities and dry onto the inside of the house. So that's the purpose our vapor barrier is serving, and so let's get back to it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later.
Siga has two approved methods for installing the vapor barrier to the structure. So the first one is using Twinnet, which is their double-sided tape, and we have no doubt that it's a magnificent product. So the way that works is you just put it along all the stud, and then it's going to make installation easier because you can just peel the first part, put your membrane, and then you go stud by stud, and installation is nice and easy, everything is flat and good looking. The only problem is that it's a little bit pricey. So when you do the math, it adds up pretty quickly. So the other method they approve of is using staples. Now the problem with the staples is that you are penetrating your vapor barrier, right? So we decided to go with a combination approach. So we are using the staples, but we are also putting a bit of a big stretch on each of the studs, all along the stud. And this gives us a few benefits. So the first one is when we put the staple, it's going to self-heal because it has the sealant in the back. And then the other benefit is that when you apply big stretch, it's pretty flexible. So you can put your vapor barrier and you have the flexibility to make adjustments if you need to. Now, when it dries, then it's going to act pretty much as an adhesive. As you can see here, I mean, if I pull it hard, it's going to separate, but it's acting pretty much as an adhesive here. And it's isolating the base. And for this, it's also worth mentioning since Big Stretch is water-based, and Siga allows the vapor barrier to come from the cavity into the interior, it's not going to interfere with its curing process. And it's actually cheaper.
So I learned a couple tricks from this guy on the internet. He's been using Siga Majrex. His name is Kyle. He has this YouTube channel that's still growing, and he's doing great, but he needs all the help he can get. So you should go check out his channel. His name is RR Builders, and you should go check it out and subscribe because he's doing amazing. Anyway, the first tip I learned was he cuts the Majrex starting it off not at the top but a little bit lower. And that makes the cut really nice and easy instead of having this wild thing moving all over the place. Once you cut it, then you can just finish it off up top. The second tip I learned from him was to install the Majrex using a laser. And that's a great tip, to install it nice and level so that you use the best material utilization. So let's do that installation.
About how we detail penetrations on our vapor barrier. Let's start with electrical outlets. The first thing we do is apply a coat of big stretch all along the perimeter of the outlet, and this is to make the gap between the outlet and the vapor barrier as small as possible. And then, because we like to be overkill, we cover everything with Resan. Now let's talk about cable penetrations. You will notice that we have a patching here. So the first thing we do is, as part of the main installation of Siga, we allow ourselves larger holes just to make our installation process easier. Once we have them, we detail them as best as we can, but then we're going to apply a patch like this one. And what this does is we are keeping the 4-inch overlap recommended by Siga, and then the holes for the cables are going to be as small as possible, and this also allows us to have one penetration per cable. So then to detail them, the first thing I do is, and this is just out of my own idea, this is a square with a corner cut, and then we apply it like this just to make the hole as small as possible. And then we follow the procedure recommended by Siga, which is 2 pieces about 1 inch wide, and then you just put them like this, and then you sandwich the cable in between. We have already detailed that penetration as best as we could. The next step is going to be applying the patch. So to apply the patch, we're going to cut the circle for the pipe as close as we can. In any case, if you make it larger, it should not exceed ½ inch, and that's per Siga's recommendations. And after that, once we put it up there, we're just going to use Resan pieces, overlapping each other until everything is perfectly covered. So we made it. We completed the installation of our Siga vapor barrier. So let's go through some of our lessons learned. first off, we have the electrical outlets. We went with the overkill approach of applying a big stretch sealant all around it and then recent tape. But honestly, I think that there's a better way of doing this. If you know how to do it, please comment below. We're also aware that there are holes in the back of the outlet. Next time we're going to cover them at least with tape, unless you give us better ideas. For here it's okay, it's just a shed, it's our lab, so it's not a big deal. Next off, if you have anything in the ceiling, adding these boxes to the cavities is pretty awesome. We're pretty thankful to Aaron from Miller's Construction for giving us this tip. So it's going to make your life so much easier, and it's going to have a better air sealing. And finally, the third thing we would recommend is, we thought that Siga would be pretty fragile, but it's actually pretty resistant. So my advice is, as you are installing rock wool insulation, go and cover it with Siga, and you're going to see an improvement right away on the quality of air. Rock wool is an awesome product, but while you are installing it, there's a ton of like tiny dust that is pretty painful in your throat. So that's it. On our next episode, we're going to be covering Medite. So if you want to know what that is, don't miss it out. And if you enjoyed this one, please consider giving us a like and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.